Hey guys, J Funk here, and today I want to discuss a 24 Waycrest that I did last week on the Sanguine Fortified Grievous affixes in Season 3 of Battle for Azeroth. Now, see right out of the gate, what you'll see what I did there was I Tiger's Lusted Yoda before the key starts so that he can pull both sides of these Soul Essence mobs very quickly and group them up. Usually tanks have trouble pulling these mobs, and if you Tiger's Lusted, they have a little bit extra time. You can also see right there that I did a Whirling Dragon Punch bug at 0.1 seconds on the timer. How that works is if you use Whirling Dragon Punch towards the end of your SCF, aka like 0.2 to 0.1 seconds left on it, the spirits will return to you and do 300% damage. There's a guide on that on picketstrategy.com if you're interested. But other than that, we're just cleaning up these mobs. I try to interrupt the mobs when I can, the Scar Souls, and try to stun if I see a lot of casts going on the same person all at once. Now, before the key started, we originally discussed that we were going to skip these mobs in a Shroud for cooldowns. So you'll see I didn't use any cooldowns in that pull because I thought we were going to Shroud right to the boss in case it was top left. Unfortunately for Waycrest, you can't really predict what it's going to be, what side you're going to get. It could be top left, it could be, you know, bottom right, top right. You can't predict. So we try to plan around getting top left, and we were going to Shroud before the key starts so we can come back to those Soul Essence bombs later. But we forgot to do that. So we're just clearing these mobs here in order to have people's cooldowns come off cooldown. So you'll see I just lose a lot of damage here for not using my cooldowns, but I want to have these cooldowns up. I want to have my font, my blood, all of my cooldowns up for this boss. So after we kill these mobs here, we're gonna go right to the boss. I'm gonna channel font, and then I'm gonna use my pre-pot. And what you can do here, but what I fail to do, is you can roll off the edge of this railing towards the bosses, and you'll land directly on top of the boss. You do take a little bit of damage, but it doesn't seem to matter very much at that point in the fight. So you'll see here, we're all getting ready to pull. We're going to try to nuke this boss down as fast as possible. On my pot, and then I use lightning there immediately to refresh my hit combo so it doesn't fall off. And I mess up my opener slightly here and don't get the proper sequence, but it still ends up being okay. We nuke down our rogue who gets mind controlled very quickly. We're pushing the bosses very fast. I try to do right there. I interrupted an off target. I interrupted Briar so that she would stop casting on random targets. We have like a assigned kick order on the main bosses, and then we have people that are assigned to the off bosses just to kick the off targets. So in this dungeon, you can run Dampen Harm or Diffuse Magic, I think. I use Diffuse Magic because I like it for this boss. It means that Diffuse Magic is up for almost every single one of those unstable runic mark casts that she does. You can just pop it towards the beginning and you can just take reduced damage. You do want to spread from your teammates when this happens so that you don't murder them with the AoE at the end of it, but gotta be careful there. But I try to keep Touch of Karma for Sister Briar in case you get Jagged Nettles. I think Touch of Karma is very strong to mitigate that damage. But in terms of this particular pull, I didn't have it up at the time. But fortunately, I did not get targeted at all. So right here, you'll see what I do is I instantly leg sweep. As soon as the cast finishes, I instantly leg sweeps, because if I get mind controlled, it won't go off. But if it's other target gets mind controlled, then it'll stun them instantly so they don't do anything, which is very important because you don't want people to accidentally use their cast. Now here, I should have used a pot or something. I made a mistake here, and I should have seen that both of the targets were, like both the off targets were casting on me, and I should have used a pot, but I didn't. And my healer yells at me, which is understandable because I should have been playing better there. Here comes the second runic mark. I just spread away from my teammates. I try to do some Vivifies to help out, and also keep jumping, keep moving, so that I don't get many stacks of this debuff during this phase. But here, I think at this point in the fight, I've recognized that the fight is pretty much over. We don't really need me to do more damage, but my damage this pull has been atrocious. But I'm just gonna say whatever. I don't need to use cooldowns on Briar. It's not that important. I'm gonna save my cooldowns for the next pull because the next pull is probably gonna be more. My cooldowns are probably gonna be more impactful in that pull. But at this point, we're just trying to clear up Briar because she's just really annoying. And we're gonna move on to the next pull, which I believe is the patrol plus the random witch that is over here. And I'm gonna use all my cooldowns on the witch. But you could also use the cooldowns on the guard because the guard has a shadow cleave ability. that you can cancel the Shadow Cleave with a paralysis or a stun, and it will not recast, which is very good. And you can get a weak aura that tracks the timing of that ability, but I don't have it in this run. But I use my cooldowns on the witch to try to get her down, but I am focusing the guard at the same time. You see I use the paralysis there to interrupt it so it doesn't recast, because the Shadow Cleave does a very large amount of damage to the tank, especially prot warriors, and it will murder your tank on higher key levels. Unfortunately there, Yoda turns the witch while she's casting Marking Cleave, and then people don't recognize it. This pull starts to get out of hand a little bit with a lot of Grievous stacks. We're just trying to catch up. And here is where, like, if I focused the guard earlier with my TOD and everything, this is where it would become in handy, because the guard would already be dead in this pull. Unfortunately, Yoda goes down here. We run away. The beginning of this dungeon goes a bit not as planned, but we still end up timing it, which is honestly, to me, incredible, because I personally don't think I played super well in this dungeon. But what you see there, I ran away from the mobs. I'm just trying to kite while the tank gets aggro back and taunts the mobs, because having more deaths is probably worse. I'm gonna get this witch down to stop the etch, and then we just focus the captain on over time. I use Ring of Peace there. I quickly recognize the fact that the mob is going to be that the stun on the mob is going to remain while the Sanguine Pool will start to heal it. So I quickly use Ring of Peace and knock it out of it. That's why Ring of Peace is one of the more useful utilities on Sanguine Week, because it's so adaptable to the situation. Like, you can, like, Typhoon is good because you can Typhoon, but with Ring you can just ring on top of the Sanguine Pool and it just knocks them away from it regardless of where they are. And here we pulled the 2-pack, and we're trying to find the patrol that's coming down the stairs here. We thought that the patrol was coming down the stairs, but the patrol, like, stopped, because this patrol is pretty weird. I'll use all my cooldowns here, and I'm trying to, like, focus this one guard down with TOD. I'm waiting for all 4 mobs to get clumped up before I use my cooldowns. And then you see I use my Blood of the Enemy, all my cooldowns, and we're just trying to nuke one of the guards down as fast as possible, so that we can kind of manage Shadow Cleave on one target, but managing on 2 targets is pretty unrealistic. We're just not going to have enough stuns and, like, CCs to stop it. So there I use Ring and Peace. I probably did not need to use Ring there, but I was expecting the mobs to be slower, to move out of that slower than they did. So we kill the second guard here. And now we just have the 2 captains. Now the captains just have, like, they have a lot of tank damage with their captain strike, and they just have an immense amount of HP compared to other mobs. They also cast a Spirited Defense cast there that you can purge off. That makes them take 25% reduced damage. You can purge that off, you can interrupt it. You can have a Demon Hunter just sit on one of the captains and handle it, because he can alternate interrupts versus purge and get it. And you can just have a 2 melee kick rotation on another captain. So we're just killing the captains here. Now, in terms of efficiency of the pull, I think it's better to focus the captains, but I think on a hierarchy like this, I don't know if you can really get away with that, because your tank will probably just die to Shadow Cleaves. Because the captains do have a lot more HP than the guards, but as I said, it's hard as a tank to realistically live through that on a hierarchy. So here we're pulling the hounds and everything. Now, as a melee DPS with the Thorn Shapers, you have to be aware if they're gonna do thorns on you, and if you're targeted by thorns cast, you want to move away from the group so that only you get knocked back. This is what I'm talking about, the uproot. Try to move away from everyone else. I probably moved in, like, the worst possible spot, because if the direction I was being knocked back, I could have accidentally pulled the next pack, and I also knocked back our healer, which is bad as well. I should have positioned myself a little bit better. Unfortunately, the mob ends up healing a bit. This pull doesn't go as planned perfectly, but it isn't as bad as I've seen it go at sometimes. So we're just trying to decide what we need to do here. We're trying to, like, okay, do we chain this in, or we just pull it, or we just kill it and then another pull? I think we decided to just kill it. So here I move away, uproot, so that I don't knock anyone else back. Alternatively, you can use paralysis. If you don't need paralysis or stuns for the next pull, you can use them there to stop that cast if you want, but it's a pretty low priority in terms of interrupting it. As a Windwalker monk, or as a monk player in general, you can place a Transcendence. If you're going to be targeted by it, then move out of the group, and then you can just teleport. And in DH, as you saw there, can just move out of the group and then glide. But this is like a 2-target pull. I think we end up chaining here at some point. Yeah, we chain one of the Thorn Shapers, and it turns out that these 2 Thorn Shapers are not really linked together. One of the nice things about Windwalker in this pull is that if you have infected thorns casts go off, they're disease, and Windwalker can dispel them. Ideally, you should interrupt them beforehand because they do a lot of initial damage as well. The dot hurts a lot, but the initial cast hurts a lot as well. So try to interrupt it if you can, but if you can't have an interrupt for it for some reason, then you can dispel it as well. When there's no when there's no dogs or any constructs that you're pulling with the Thorn Shapers, you can just let the effigy reconstruction go off, because it only heals the dogs and the summoned units, like the Wicker Man kind of units. So here we're trying to decide what we want to do. I think we go on the side here. He's going to pull these out. Now we have to be careful here because these spits are just RNG on a target. You can LOS them, but it is a lot of damage. And if you notice that you get targeted by it, you should just cooldown defensive immediately. And you'll see there I used Touch of Karma before the pull even started, because this pull can be exceptionally dangerous and you can die in a global. One thing I did there that I noticed that some Windwalkers don't do is that I had 5 stacks of Mark of the Crane, and I'm saving my spinning. I'm waiting for a second in order to get a spinning crane kick at the very end of my SCF, because it functions similarly to the Whirling Dragon Punch bug, where if you use spinning crane kick at the end of your SCF cast, the spirits will return to you, and then you'll get maybe 1 or 2 ticks of the crane kick doing full damage with all 3 spirits, which is pretty good. If you think that you're only going to get 1 more crane kick at the end of your SCF, you might as well just wait towards the very end and get this bug. It's probably worth it. Oh, here I make a mistake. I end up dying here. I make a mistake here. So I get a Nant of Chi proc and the maggot spawn, and I end up using it. And because it's so much damage, since I'm so powerful, right? And there's so much damage, the tank just can't keep up with that much damage. So I use it, I just pull aggro on one of the maggots and I die. And again, I could have health botted. I don't think, as I said earlier, I don't think I played particularly well in this dungeon, which makes it even more impressive that we timed it, because I could have played a lot better in this dungeon, for sure. So we're just resing up here, and we're gonna go right into. We're gonna try to do this pull where you have a outlaw rogue pull all the mobs to the right there, and then you have the tank go in and pull the boss out to the left, to prevent pulling Brindle and her hounds. Unfortunately, she pulls anyway by accident. So what we end up doing, so I use TOD on the boss, right? So this ends up going very poorly. So we're trying to just reset the boss by bringing it into one of the hallways. And we're just trying to reset the boss because this pull did not go as planned. We're pulling this, and now our plan is to kill Brindle. Brindle was not originally in the route, but she all of a sudden became in the route when this pull happened. And in High Mythic Plus, you have to learn to be adaptable at times. That the pulls are probably not going to go as planned every time, and you should just go with it as best as you possibly can, and not get tilted, or not get frazzled, or whatever you want to say. Just you gotta remain resolute, focused, because the key is still timeable even if you make a decent amount of mistakes, as long as you recover from those mistakes well. I think because we lusted there as well, we end up going from Brindle, and we say, I'm not sure if we go to the Soulbound Goliath here or if we go to Rawl's room, because the Soulbound Goliath is a particularly hard boss for tank damage, and usually you want to have lust for it. So instead of doing that, usually you'll just go into the side room for Rawl and clear, and for lust. But also, you'll see Yoda trying to bring Brindle into the fire patch on the ground. The fire patches deal damage to Brindle. I think it's like 2 to 3% of her health every time it ticks. But we don't have lust, and Yoda just said, "Fuck it, we're going in." We go into the Goliath boss. And you'll see me do. I'll pop blood here, and I'll move into my spirit. I cast Whirling Dragon Punch as the Thorns cast finishes, because if the thorns spawns on me, I will still be in the middle of my Whirling Dragon Punch animation, and my Whirling Dragon Punch will like hit my own soul thorns even though I'm crowd controlled. Alternatively, you'll see here I have my SCF out, I'm casting Fist of Fury, and I move in front of where my spirits are facing, so that if I get targeted by thorns there, my spirits will then Fist of Fury my thorns, it'll cleave onto it. You can do this technique with Demon Hunter as well. If you use Blade Dance right as the Soul Thorns cast finish, you'll apply Chaos Brand, and you'll do Trail of Ruin on your Soul Thorns, which can be nice. It probably isn't worth losing DPS for, but it is a handy tool to have if you think that your Thorns damage is going to be kind of sketchy at times, or if you want to get a little extra damage. I don't think it's worth saving some things for, usually. Usually just switch to these as fast as possible and just kill things. And just kill them. But we reset here, and now we're just killing the boss. At this point, it's just watch out for fires as tank, because the fires can spawn on top of the Goliath sometimes, and then you're just screwed, because you want to do as little fire phases as possible, if you can help it. We keep going here. Soulbound Goliath. At this point, it's just kill the boss. It's just like a training dummy exercise. Just hit the boss as much as possible, do as much damage as you possibly can. As you'll see, I think Windwalker single target. One of the reasons why Windwalker Monk wasn't brought to keys very much this season was that Windwalker Monk single target damage is kind of lackluster. I mean, it can be good if you build around it and stuff, but it's usually lackluster. It's really hard to be exceptionally good single target damage compared to most people. But after this boss, we're going to go into Rawls area. And Rawls area is usually where the bigger pulls happen. You usually will do these pulls outside in the courtyard so that you have more room to kite. Especially with Sanguine, it can be very hectic if you start doing pulls in those hallways. But this boss is just really is a patchwork fight. So I'm trying to save all my cooldowns for these bigger pulls, because like I'm sacrificing my boss damage a little bit to gain faster trash pulls because it's fortified. Which I think it ends up being worth it overall for Windwalker Monk. Now I do know Windwalker Monks, some Windwalker Monks will run like Cyclo or like Coral for more boss damage, which is fine as well. Personally, I have like 2 455 trinkets in Season 3, so I just end up using those because it was really good. And I'm just trying to keep up my hit combo and Fury of his Wind stacks here as best as I can between pulls. You can do that via Chi Burst, you can do it with Flying Serpent Kick. I do manage to keep my Fury of his Wind stacks here, so I'm going to use my Blood, Fist of Fury, a TOD the Gorger, because Gorgers are pretty dangerous and they usually have the highest health in the pull. And you'll see with the Font and a Proximity Potion and all this stuff, and Blood, Windwalker Monk can do some pretty insane AoE damage. I also get a pretty big Folly. Now Folly is kind of misleading, I guess I should say. Windwalker Monk, I think Diver's Folly was not as good for Windwalker Monk as other classes this season, primarily because of how it interacts. So how Diver's Folly worked was it provides a buff on your character that stores 5% of the damage you deal during this buff. And for Windwalker Monks, a lot of our damage in AoE pulls is dealt during Storm, Earth, and Fire, and during Storm, Earth, and Fire we do 45% of our damage, and the Diver's Folly proc does not store the damage done by your spirits as well, so as a result your Diver's Follies are much less than everyone else's. Additionally, for some reason, the damage from Touch of Death is not stored with Diver's Folly either, so it overall ended up being like a good weapon, a very good weapon. You wanted to have one, but it ended up being worse for Windwalker than everyone else. One thing you'll notice that I do in these dungeons is that I end up anytime that I can Tiger's Lust my tank to have them do their pull faster, I will do that. I will take the opportunity to do that. It's just to help them like gather mobs up and get out to this courtyard faster. It's very nice for them, because usually they'll have the speed pod, or if they don't have speed pod, maybe like get in dangerous situations where like they can't run away from the mobs fast enough. I'm just trying to look out for my tank, right? You have to look out for your tank and healer players, man. That is very important. Synergy is a very important aspect of Mythic Plus. But this is a standard AoE pull here. I maybe should have used Fawn on this pull. But I think I ended up saving it for the boss. I believe the boss is the next pull that we end up doing here. And I think Waycrest for me it's one of my favorite dungeons this expansion, just because there's so much AoE that happens. It feels somewhat like Legion dungeons, where you just pull a bunch of mobs. Yeah, the mobs hurt a lot and they have some important casts, but generally it's just a lot of AoE when done well, which feels great. That's why one of the reasons I love this dungeon so much. It's also it's like the only 5 boss dungeon in the expansion. So here we're gonna do Rawl. Now for Rawl, ideally you'll see like there's a Rod and Expulsion cast about to happen. Rod and Expulsion will cast on the location, the current location of a player. Ideally, what you have happen is you have everyone bait the Rod and Expulsion in the same place throughout the fight. This rarely ends up happening. But ideally you have that happen so that you have more room to work with in this fight. Otherwise the Rod and Expulsion won't get anywhere. And the Rod and Expulsion hurts a lot. You do not want to be in front of him when he's casting it. And you do not want to stand in those void zones, because they also hurt a lot. So here, we see we have a Piglet there. And what I try to do is I try to move away from the boss, because Sanguine and Rawl can be a particularly dangerous combo. So what I try to do there is I try to move out of where Rawl is, because the maggots don't drop any Sanguine when you kill them, but the Piglet that we pulled did. What I was trying to accomplish there was move away from the boss and then taunt the Piglet away so that the Sanguine drops towards the back of the room. Because if you get Sanguine dropped on Rawl, you're going to have a very bad time. But we end up just like, I think I taunt it, but then I think also it's just, we like use Typhoon and everything just to get it away. Just make sure that it doesn't get close. And this whole pull, we're just trying to chain maggots and like trash pulls into Rawl to make it as efficient as possible during this pull. As a DPS player with the maggots, just make sure to look out for infest casts and interrupt them any way you can. You can stun them, you can stun them, you can interrupt them, and you can do whatever, as long as those casts don't get off. It's very important. Because otherwise your tank is going to take a lot of damage, you're going to have less count for the dungeon, because you're going to lose the count from the maggot that when the infest cast goes off, the maggot despawns. So you can no longer get that count from that maggot. And then it does a huge dot on the tank, and then after that dot expires, it spawns 2 maggots, but those don't give any count. So having infest go off is a very bad thing. Try to prevent that from happening as much as possible. One thing I'll do on this fight is I'll try to ring a piece the ads that are walking towards him slowly. I'll try to ring a piece like the right side of the ads closer to the middle, and then I'll stun. This groups up about 3 of them total to cleave them down. It's not a huge deal if he gets a lot of buffs, a lot of stacks, because I mean like they made the boss pretty easy in that respect. Like the stacks don't really matter. They don't do a whole lot besides give him some bonus damage. It's not particularly dangerous. But after this pull, we still need more count before going down. So we're gonna pull this pull, the Void Emissary plus all these things. So I'm trying to pop my font before we go in. I pop my pot, I TOD, I Karma, and I make sure to Karma before the hide cast goes off. I'm trying to do as much damage as I can to the Void. Yoda, our tank, is trying to like LOS these infest casts and just kind of LOS the Void at the same time. Trying to be careful. And it ends up going pretty well here. It can be kind of dangerous. We do end up killing a Piglet on top of the Void. It's not a huge deal. The Void does not heal from Sanguine, thank goodness. Otherwise that would be very hard to deal with. I use Diffuse Magic just to reduce the damage that I'm taking, because I noticed the group is a little bit low on HP, and if I take a large amount of damage it wouldn't be great. but we're still short count, so we're trying to kite this mob into more mobs and chain pull it a little bit, but at this point, I think we're just committed to killing him and waiting for the maggots to spawn and then chaining those into the next boss, or next pull. So I got a proc here. I'm holding my Dance Chichi proc until all the mobs are grouped up. I want to get as much value out of this proc as I possibly can. And then we still need more count. I think we pull some of the mobs in the Honey Lodge room here. First, we're just going to deal with these piglets and these maggots so that Yoda doesn't like die to spit or infest by accident. We pull one Survivalist, one Mastiff. The Survivalist has a Slithering Serpent cast that you need 2 melee kicks for. If that goes off, it's pretty bad. You can dispel it, but ideally that doesn't go off because then pulls can go very bad very quickly. We're kind of a little bit claustrophobic here. What I end up doing there, I pop Karma on the Mastiff, who has the highest HP, and then I jump into the trap just in case we want room to move that way, because the trap does a lot of damage. I bring a piece the mobs through the Sanguine on purpose so that they get through, so that we don't have to deal with the Survivalist slowly walking through the Sanguine because he's low on HP and then healing up. I'm just trying to move this pole to the other side of that Sanguine so that we have room to kite over there instead of in this hallway, because this hallway is starting to become pretty claustrophobic and we don't want to be here anymore. So we heal up, use our Fish Feast, and now we're going to pull the Matron down below, so I think we end up going down below. I believe we have enough count at this point that we can go down below. You do have to be careful of this corner pack here, because if you get too close, if you don't go like directly on the corner of that door, you can pull that pack by accident. So we have a Prot Warrior, and Prot Warriors have an ability called Spell Reflection, and Matron Alma has a cast that you can use Spell Reflect on that causes her to take 15% extra damage. There it is there, Decaying Touch. If you reflect this, it makes her take 15% bonus damage for like 8 seconds, and it does a lot of damage to her. It makes this with a Prot Warrior that can reflect this every other cast, it makes it more bearable. As a Windwalker monk player, if you're going to use TOD on this lady, which you should, I think, if it's up, you want to wait for that debuff you see on the frames to be active on her in order to use it, because we double dip on percentage damage taken increases on mobs with TOD. But I'm kind of just saving my Faunt and my Blood of the Enemy here for the next pull, which is going to be a large AoE pull. It isn't... My cooldowns are more useful in an AoE situation than on single target at this point. And a large amount of damage that's going to be dealt to this boss is through Decaying Touch. I do have a weak aura that I got recently that will include damage done by Spell Reflect into details. So that's why you see Yoda doing 30k single target here. It does a lot of damage. Alright, we're gonna res up here. Unfortunately, Yoda does die towards the end of this pull, because that mini boss does do a lot of damage. If you don't kill it quickly, it can be very scary to deal with. And if you aren't a Prot Warrior player, I don't know if it's really that efficient to do, because it took us about 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes to kill it. We're gonna pull all these mobs here. We're gonna be very sure to not pull the Mark Sister in the corner you saw there briefly, because the Mark Sister is a tank shredder, because her auto attacks also deal bonus magic damage, and it's a lot of magic damage that it deals. This pull is kind of awkward. You see by doing no damage here, I'm kind of just waiting for the mobs to move out of the candles and for all the mobs to kind of like group up that we have in the pull. And once that happens, then I pop all my cooldowns. Luckily there, I got a Dance Chichi proc right towards the end of SCF, and then I did what I explained earlier, which I saved at I use an SCF at the very end of the pull. I use Ring of Peace there to knock the soul essences away from the mob into the corner for Sanguine. Unfortunately, they don't die immediately, so we have this issue where the diviner there walks through the Sanguine. Then somehow we figured out in this run that for some reason, if you pull these mobs in a certain way, the soul essence that's patrolling with the mobs will not pull as well. So we end up just chanting it in, I guess, because we didn't know that was a thing. We didn't know that they weren't linked, I guess. So we end up chanting it in. It's not a huge deal, because I mean, we can cleave 2 of these at the same time. I think now that I look at this, I think that the one mob meleeed me for some reason as it was walking past. Very strange. We do have some sanguine that's in the right way here. And what Yoda's going to do is he's going to put down racing flags. Now, the racing flags are a Mr. Pandaria item from the Order of the Cloud Serpent rep. And he has a macro. So the racing flags are like items in the world. And you can use a Shadow Step or Intervene for prot warriors on these racing flags. And you can make a macro that like focuses it and like auto uses it. But what Yoda's going to try to do here with these racing flags is he has them placed at either side of the arena, and he's going to try to intervene, do a combination of intervening to these flags using Heroic Leap in order to delay Lord Waycrest's Wasting Strike cast enough so that he can spell reflect almost every single one of them. Because what will happen here, you'll see, is that you will go out of range of his Wasting Strike cast, and he will finish the cast, but then he won't be able to finish casting it on you because you're out of range. Instead of finishing the cast, he'll like recast it on you. But apparently Virulent Plague has a higher priority in the cast list for Lord Waycrest, where he'll try to prioritize casting that if it's off cooldown. So if you manage to successfully run away from him, you can get him to cast Virulent Pathogen instead, which then will delay his Wasting Strike cast long enough so that you can spell reflect it more often. But you'll notice as a Windwalker monk, but no other disease to spell in this fight, my priority is to dispel people immediately. Now, as a Windwalker monk player on this fight, the first thing you want to do when you're dispelling someone is you want to like recognize the fact that they're not close enough to the group that dispelling it will spread to other people in your group. It's very important. A lot of it is eyeballing it. You just look at the person that it's going to be cast on, because I use Plater, and Plater will tell me who Lord Waycrest is targeting with this below the frame like that, below the frame, as you saw. And I saw it on myself. If you see it on yourself during the cast, you can just roll away from your group, and then you can just wait for the cast to finish and instantly dispel yourself and take almost no damage from the cast. Yeah, you just want to recognize the fact. I use a mouse over macro here, and then as soon as I see that they're away from the group, I just dispel them immediately. That's the highest priority. Additionally, you'll see I tried to Tiger's Lust Yoda there. The old strategy, before the racing flag trick was discovered, the old strategy there was you would just have a combination of Heroic Leap and Tiger's Lust to run away from Lord Waycrest. So I tried to help him out there, but I think it may have caused more harm than good, because he probably wasn't expecting it to happen. But here, I'm trying to save my Fist of Fury for this next pull here. Probably a mistake, but I wanted to have it up for this pull. We use Imprison on the Mark Sister to make sure that it doesn't pull during this. So what we're going to do here is that Growl, our healer, is going to Sunfire the far mobs, and then use Ursul's Vortex in this corner here. So when the Loom Horrors do their initial leap towards people, they'll get yoinked back by the Ursul's Vortex and do no damage. And we're trying to slowly kite these Gloom Horrors over to this ledge here, because our healer Growl is going to stand on this ledge. And how the Gloom Horror AI works is that for its leap cast, it will try to leap to the furthest target. In this case, it's Growl. And because they cannot path to that target, they can't path to Growl up on that ledge there. Because they can't path to him with that leap, it's going to give them path not available, and their leap cast won't go off, which reduces a lot of the AoE damage that'll be done on this pull. Now, the hardest part of this pull is having your tank survive it. Even with the leaps not going off, there's a lot of tank damage because there's a lot of mobs. So it requires very good tanking, very good healing in order to keep the tank alive during this part. He's going to have to kite at some point. And then you're just like, as a DPS player, you're just trying to evenly cleave these down, especially on Sanguine Week, so that Sanguine doesn't spawn and then heal all of them. Starts to get a little bit messy here, but I think we end up successfully doing this pull, which is great. This is one of the harder pulls in the dungeon, I would say, as it can go very poorly, as you may have experienced before. If your tank dies, then it's just a lot of chain dying, trying to get aggro back, because it's hard to get aggro back on all these mobs, and then you can just end a run right there. But we end up doing pretty successfully. This run goes moderately well. I mean, I made a lot of mistakes for sure, and we had some problems happen in this run, especially towards early on in the run, with some dying and stuff. But even with all that, we managed to recover and still time this key. Is extremely impressive, and I can't be more proud of these guys for doing it. But to get into the Gorak tool fight here, so you're gonna see Growl. He's gonna use a costume here because his Torn's way too big to do this. He's gonna use a costume here, and then he's gonna jump on top of this it's like torch in the corner of the room. And this is for the same reason as to why we used it on the previous pull. The Death Touch Slavers they have the same jump ability that the previous mobs have, and they can't jump to Growl right now. He has path not available. So that mechanic, which ends up doing a lot of damage in this fight, is all of a sudden just not in the fight anymore. One of the side effects of this, though, because he is up there, he cannot do the burn mechanic on this fight because he's in that corner. So that makes it so that your DPS players are going to have to pick up the fires and do that mechanic, which isn't a huge deal. Him being up there is very good. You're going to see him up in the corner just spamming Wrath, DPSing. It's very useful to have this happen. It makes it so that there's a lot less damage going out in AoE, and especially on a Grievous week, that's going to be really crucial for your group. But we're trying to get burned. We're trying to burn the boss here. I think at some point someone says that we're not going to time it, and I go, man, we got this. But this is pretty much the end of the dungeon. I hope you liked it, the video. If you did, make sure to subscribe and like the video. I'm gonna try to do more of these in the future next season. I'm gonna have one more video coming out, I believe, later on this week that talks about overlooked classes during this patch that could have been played more. Yeah, I'm excited for Season 4. Hope you guys are as well. Season 3 was a good time, but it was also the dark times, as we'll see next video. Beguiling was a little bit too hard, maybe wasn't the greatest affix, but regardless, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.
Okay.
Or attack close.
Not short.
What the hell?
There was so much pressure, like,